This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the true crime podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse and shining a harsh spotlight on the parents, guardians, and caretakers who silence them. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 75, Rica Rountree, Part 3. Over the past 2 weeks, I told you the story of 8-year-old Rica Rountree, who DCFS left in her father's home despite clear evidence that she was being abused. After Rica died on January 26, 2019, investigators found disturbing cell phone videos of Rica's abuse and arrested her father's girlfriend, Cindy Baker. After Cindy was convicted, Rica's father, Rica Rountree, was also arrested for his part in his daughter's death. In this episode, you'll hear my conversation with Rica's mother, Ann Rountree, who is relentless in her mission to protect other children from suffering her daughter's fate. This is the story of a sweet, kind little girl who could make anyone smile and who loved her dolls like they were her own children. It's also the story of the failure of Illinois' Department of Children and Family Services to protect yet another vulnerable child from targeted and obvious child abuse. This is part 3 of the horrific story of Rica Rountree. My guest today on the podcast is Ann Rountree, Rica's mom. Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Rica and who she was?
Oh, for sure. Amazing, energetic, amazingly awesome imagination. She was a shopper. She was a stylist. She was the family nurse. She was my ride or die. When I left, she left. She was just a small version of me, the only girl in the house besides me. So she brought much needed balance to the house, a little piece of sanity with all the boys. She was just a lovely child. She was just an amazing girl.
She really did seem like a genuinely good person. And she just seemed like a sweet little girl from everything I've been able to read and find so far. And it's really great to hear those things from you. What kind of things did she like? I think princesses were high on her list.
Yeah, she was the princess. Everyone called her princess. But she liked living. I mean, it's sad to say that at 8 years old, she was not allowed to live anymore, but she just absolutely loved doing stuff. She loved being outside. She loved going places. She loved having fun. Like I said, her imagination was second to none. I mean, if she could think it, she tried to do it. And most times she did it. She learned how to ride her bike pretty quick. She wanted her training wheels off and she hopped on that bike, and within a couple of go-arounds, she had it. So, I mean, she's just life.
She sounds like she's not the kind of girl to sit around and do nothing.
Not at all.
So what kind of things did she like to imagine? Did she write stories and draw pictures, things like that?
She absolutely did. But she had a kitchenette set, so she liked to pretend to cook. She loved being a mom to all her dolls. Very great imagination when it came to her dolls. She would go up and down the block, hit yard sales. She would come home with baby clothes, strollers, car seats. She would tell me, like, if we were in the store, that her baby needed diapers or a bottle. She was a great doll mom. She would have been a great mother by way of how she treated her dolls. being a mom to her dolls was the most important thing in her little life.
I saw so many pictures of her with her dolls, and yeah, she really looked like she was protecting them, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, when she was much smaller, I couldn't pay her to play with the doll. With having her brothers, she was into a lot of the boyish things, and as she got about 5 or 6, that's when she really took on to being a doll parent.
You had her full time until she was 6, right?
Yes.
You had visitation after that?
I had visitation for a couple months in 2017. She was taken from me in 2016. And I had visitation for maybe 3 months, and it was bi-weekly that I had her and I had her from Friday to Sunday just for a little while.
Did they ever keep her from you, or were they okay about letting her come to you for the most part?
Absolutely not. They picked and chose when they wanted to let me see her. They even had the visitation stopped, and then we were able to do phone calls in 2018, in which is how I seen her the last time. In 2018, they weren't letting me speak to her. We were supposed to have video calls, and they weren't doing that either. And I ended up at her school. And that's when I seen her alive for the last time. And she had been beaten up pretty bad. She looked horrible, but she still smiled.
Poor kid. Was that the October or the April?
It would have been April 20th, I believe, 2018, because it was after her birthday is April 16th. And they wouldn't let me speak with her or see her. And so I snuck up to the school.
There's so many times when she could have been saved if DCFS had just listened to you.
Absolutely. First of all, had DCFS done their job from day one and properly did their background, they would have known that she had tried to drown a child. She had beaten her own kid. So had they done that initially in 2016, they would have put Rica in a foster home, and I wouldn't have had to go through what I went through, and Rica would still be alive.
That's the part that I had seen just a few glimpses of throughout all the news articles, but I didn't see what exactly Cindy was accused of. So she tried to drown a child. Was it her own?
From what I read, it's another stepchild. And she was the same age as Rica, 8 years old.
And then she beat her own child.
And she beat her own child.
Seems like she kind of always wanted to have at least one to use as her punching bag, like you said.
Yeah.
Illinois does seem to have an awful lot of these.
A lot of what I seen was a lot of inconsistencies within the paperwork. So I don't know that it's an excuse for DCFS, but I don't know why they didn't tie things together. They have names wrong, birthdays wrong, or something like that. You know, I mean, it's a horrible, horrible system.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they need a complete overhaul. I mean, hiring more people is wonderful, and that's a great thing that they're doing, but they definitely need more than that.
Well, we worked on a bill, and it had gotten passed to create some checks and balances. So we've got a DCFS task force. And so hopefully with that, things will start to change. It's House Bill 3821.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And I love what you're doing with the Justice for Rica J Foundation.
Yeah, I want to try to save some other kids and give people voices. I almost lost my mind trying to fight for my daughter's life, and it went nowhere. It did nothing. I literally was losing my mind trying to get anybody to help me save my daughter's life. And man, that she died. I know that there are many other parents and caregivers in my position that genuinely want to help their children and they don't get heard. I want to just make sure I'm doing my part to give people voices.
That's awesome. It would be easy, I imagine, to just sink into depression and not want to do anything. It's unimaginable losing a child, let alone the way it happened. And I'm so sorry for your loss. It's like I said, it's unimaginable. but doing something so good in Rica's name is wonderful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's some days are hard. Today was a hard day for me. I woke up and I felt the void. And so my son, he gets a little clingy when he sees me all teared up. And so, I mean, some days are better than others. But I know they're temporary feelings that I have, and it just makes me push harder. It keeps me going because I gave up. I gave up. I gave up in 2017. And when I seen Rica the last time in 2018, it made me want to fight harder for her. Giving up was not an option based on what I seen. When I seen my daughter, she had a black eye. She had a busted lip. She had scars all over her neck. And when I seen that, I knew I had to figure something out, and I started rebuilding and getting myself back on track and going back to court and putting a fight in. And now that she's gone, I can't stop fighting still.
You don't want her to be just the kid in those news articles. You want
Right.
her to be remembered for who she was and something very important attached to her name. And that's what you're definitely doing.
Absolutely. She's more than one of the 123 children that died in Illinois. Rica was our princess. She was my only daughter. She was very much wanted. She was a planned pregnancy. She lived an amazing, amazing life with me. We've got so many memories, so many pictures, so many videos. She was an amazing child that was loved very much. And her outcome is definitely not who she was. Though she was beaten, she was killed. That was not her whole life.
I think that's really important to remember and to let people know is she was so loved. And you can see it in, there's so many wonderful pictures of you and her together. They're just beautiful. And the one video you posted on the GoFundMe of her singing that song to her brother just had me cracking up and tears in my eyes at the same time.
Yeah, she's she's got this squeaky voice like a chipmunk. But she would just sing all the time. She was quite the entertainer.
Yeah, considering what she was going through a lot of the time as well, just for her to keep a smile on. What a strong person she was.
Yes. She knew God. She grew up in church. She knew how to pray. And a lot of my comfort comes from knowing that I believe in my heart of hearts that though she was beaten and she was tortured for all that time, I believe that God was with her, protecting her. And I believe that she had to suffer in the way that she suffered. And she had to die the way that she died because her purpose was this. This was her purpose. And now there's so many children that won't have to suffer the way that she did because I've lifted my voice and I'm speaking out and I'm making changes. And it's kind of what I want to believe to help me. God was with her and protecting her through it all. I don't understand how the workers for DCFS can do their jobs. How can they go into that building or how can they take on these positions and so many little lives are impacted by them? They are there to do a job, protect the children or help the children, and they're not doing their jobs. And it's evident with the kids that are dying. There's families being torn apart that shouldn't be torn apart. But then there's also situations where they're leaving kids in situations just like AJ Friend. That is another horrific case that it didn't have to happen if the workers had done their jobs.
Yes, in that one, they were just too hell-bent on reunification when they should have been taking him out of there, as
Absolutely.
opposed to Rica's, where they seemed to be just completely focused on keeping her in the home when she would have been better off out.
It was really strange because I have other children. Richard and I, Rica's father, were going through a divorce. And when I had gotten arrested and Rica went to live with him, he then asked for custody of her. And so anything that was going on with DCFS, it was, oh, I'm just a disgruntled ex. I am trying to, manipulate the situation to get at him. And it was nothing like that. I broke up with him. I kicked him out my house. I didn't want to deal with him. I never had an issue parenting my children. I've never had an issue here with DCFS and abusing my children. I never, ever was founded for abusing my children anywhere. So the fact that they allow this woman who's got a history of abuse, have been founded for abuse, keep my child and abuse her and kill her, I still have a hard time understanding how that worked.
It's mind-boggling. There's no good reason I can imagine that they just kept finding things unfounded, and especially with all of the evidence in front of them, just because she wasn't telling them. Like you had said, she's not going to tell if she's afraid she's just going to have to go back and face the ramifications of that.
She had told her teacher that she was afraid to go home, and the teacher tried to get her help, and they did nothing. They sent her home anyways. They said that there was nothing they could do. And I found this out later. I had DCFS called on me all the time. Mm-hmm. When Richard and I broke up, any conversations that I was having with him would get twisted, and DCFS would be at my house. And I asked him, and I'm like, are you sending DCFS to my house? Are you calling them on me? And he's like, no. I said, well, it's amazing that they're coming here after I tell you something is going on in the house, and they come here with some twisted version of it. So is your girlfriend doing it? And he's like, no, she wouldn't do that. She don't got time to do this. Well, it only made sense that she apparently did have plenty of time to do it. And she had history having her own cases of how to deal with DCFS and get them out to my house. My son tried to kill himself, and he ended up in the hospital. And I told Richard, that he had tried to kill himself or whatever. DCFS came to the house for medical neglect. When they came to the house, my son was still in the hospital. They picked him up where he tried to kill himself, took him to another town, Champaign, and put him in the hospital. So at this point, I'm like, Richard, somebody in your house is definitely sending DCFS over here on me. And the DCFS worker, too, was like, I've been here 7 times. At this point, it's harassment. And she told me how to file for the harassment and get them to stop coming, because clearly it's all BS. None of it was ever true. And it was just, I guess, Cindy playing games. She had dealt with DCFS in her own life. And so I guess she thought that I would, have a reason for them in my life too. Like she sent them, they would find something. They would never find anything. I've always had a nice, clean house. I've always had food. I've always had a job, so there was nothing for them to ever do. And the fact that there's no medical neglect, my son is at the hospital right now. It was just all BS. So, yeah.
Well, she had lots of time on her hands.
Yeah, she apparently did have a lot of time on her hands. And apparently Richard trusted her way too much. And I don't know, put too much into her.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, for him to be able to be, walking through that one video, how can a father stand by and watch that happening? It's unthinkable.
Well, apparently with the determination for the second trial, when they were bringing in the evidence and we had to go back, that was her opportunity to let everyone know Richard's role, his true role. She tried to put the blame on him, but he didn't just stand by and watch. He abused Rica too. Not to the extent that Cindy did, but he abused his daughter just as well as Cindy did. She was in hell.
It's unbelievable how anyone can think that way. Just the punishments that some people are able to dream up. Where does that come from? You have to wonder.
Yeah, it was from people that grew up around her. They said she's always been evil. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when, that she's always been capable of doing what she did to my daughter. And she definitely loved Black men, but not Black women. And her darkest child is who was beaten.
So, yeah, there does come an element of racism in there. And I had seen that your attorney mentioned that, and that children of color are more likely to be abused or more often overlooked in the system. And it's not something that should be in this day and age, but it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Me being a Black woman, Cindy being a white woman, they just didn't take me serious. They looked at my current situation. I gotten into some trouble. So they looked at my current situation and took my current situation for who I am as a whole person. And as time went on, I got worse. I'm fighting for my daughter. Nobody is listening to me. I know my daughter is getting beaten. And it may sound crazy, but a lot of stuff came to me in dreams, and I would tell people, and they're like, well, how do you know if you're not talking to her? I said, that's my daughter. We were tight, like tight. She was my daughter. We did everything together. She was my daughter. I felt the pains that she felt. In December, I ended up in the hospital for 3 days with some stomach issue, and they couldn't find what was going on. There was a pop in my stomach, and it was all done. They had me hooked up to machines. I had these pains, and my blood pressure would elevate. So they were real pains. They could see that they were real pains that I was having, but they could not find what was going on with me. And in January, my daughter was dead from her stomach getting kicked. And so when I went to court January 10th, I got sentenced to prison. The DCFS worker was there for my son. And I said, please go and check on my daughter. Please go and check on my daughter. They are going to kill her. And 16 days later, my daughter was dead. But I knew it. I knew it. Me and Rica were so close. She was my only daughter. You know, I have 4 sons. I was willing to have 6 kids trying to get my daughter. And Rica came at number 5, and I was ecstatic. She was my baby. I mean, our bond was just so amazing that I knew exactly what was going on because I felt it.
And I don't doubt it a bit either, especially knowing, that the other kids had said she did get kicked more than once.
Yeah. Yep. She used my daughter for her own pleasure. And by the grace of God, she is so sick that she recorded it. And I'm grateful that her sickness got her caught.
Exactly.
And she said that the recordings were in her phone because she would show them to Rica later. They were lessons. So she recorded them. She showed Rica, and Rica's like, well, yeah, I did overreact, or yeah, I could have handled it differently, or it wasn't that she would go back and watch them herself. She said she was showing them to Rica. But I believe she got some type of pleasure watching those videos. Everybody else was flinching and couldn't look at the video. Her eyes stayed glued to the screen.
You would show a child a video of maybe their behavior later on, not their punishment.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. What would she be learning from seeing herself holding cans in the air for hours at a time?
Yeah, they didn't even publish all the video that was seen in court. She slapped the mess out of my daughter. She hit her so hard. I wanted to hit her. I wanted to jump across the courtroom.
I'm sure.
And hit her. I couldn't believe that my baby went through what she went through. I just couldn't. But you could see that Cindy took pleasure in watching those videos.
Even in front of people. It didn't.
Even in front of people.
And then you have to wonder what's going to happen with her kids. I mean, they're children, sure, and they're innocent as well. But the way a child is raised and what they're exposed to shapes who they are as an adult. So I hope they're getting therapy.
Well, her family was in court. The kids were in court. They're with their dad, and they are not very nice people.
I can imagine.
Her abused daughter is also the one on the video that was gyrating behind Rica. She had to go to therapy, but she ain't no different. She's horrible. She was in the courtroom laughing, and she's her mother's daughter, and I pray for them all. They treated me like I had done something wrong. Her mom sat on the other side. She stared me down almost the whole time. Every time I look up, she's just me mugging me. I mean, we almost got into a fight after 2 or 3 of the court dates. They treated me like I did something to them. This lady killed my daughter. Why are y'all mad at me? What did I do?
How dare you want justice for your daughter?
Right. What kind of crazy person am I to want this lady to be held accountable for taking my princess away from me? I gotta be crazy,
Oh, it's just amazing the delusion some people will live under for their entire lives.
Well, she was in jail with my sister's wife. She never knew that she was married to my sister, and they were in the same pod together. And she would tell them she didn't do it. She was innocent. She's going to get out. But she didn't have any emotions. She didn't have any issues. She didn't have nothing. She acted like life was great inside the jail. She acted like everything was fine and that she was going to get out. The day that she got sentenced, the jail babied her. They let her come out. They let her do, pretty much anything that she wanted to do on that day. And I don't know why. You got life in prison for taking a life. You deserve to be miserable. You don't deserve to have special treatment because you got life in prison for taking a child's life.
Not at all.
It sickens me. Richard's going to be out soon. I'm still paying child support. I've cashed in a lottery ticket for $1,000, $1,075. They took that. My state taxes, they took that. My job, they were taking money for him. And I got back into court and the judge issued an abatement, which stops me from having to pay him while he's in prison. But the state has the option to still collect. And they chose, regardless to how many times I've been in there begging them to stop taking my money to send to this man that's in prison for killing my daughter. They said, well, that's money that you owe to him. Even though the child support stopped, you have to pay those back payments. And I'm like, I never would have been working. I never would have filed taxes. I never would have done a whole lot of things if I'd have known that they were going to start sending my money back to him. I filed taxes after she issued the abatement, thinking that I was safe. I cashed in my ticket after the abatement, thinking I was safe. And we had the Supreme Judge in there. And they all said if the state can do what the state wants to do, and if the state wants to go above the judge's ruling and still take that arrearage, that they can do that. And so the man who put my daughter in that situation has been taken care of by me. I've been taking care of him. I've been sending him money. I've been making sure that he is living his best prison life.
I'm so angry for you hearing that. That's ridiculous. It's just adding insult to injury.
Yep. Yeah.
Even if it's for arrears, at the time that the arrears were from, he wasn't exactly caring for her, proven by the fact that he's in prison right now.
Not just that fact. The fact that you look at her pictures from when she was with them and you look at her pictures from when she was with me, they did not take care of my daughter. My daughter wore hand-me-down clothes. She wore 2 big shoes. She had a corn on her foot when she was coming for the visits. And I, would buy her sandals, flip-flops to wear so that she didn't have to wear these big shoes. And each time she went back, she'd come back with the same big old shoes. She's told me she takes my stuff and gives it to her daughters. So I ended up taking Rica to the hospital and having the thing cut off of her foot because she said Cindy had gotten the stuff for her foot, but she put it on her once and hasn't put it on her again and told her that she wasn't going to. I told Richard that he needed to watch the thing on her foot because it was hurting my baby. And he said, whatever, I can't really do nothing with what they got going on in their house. I need to worry about my own. So whenever she came back and I seen that it had gotten worse, I took her and got it cut off. But they did not care for my daughter. They did not take care of my daughter. When she was with me, I dyed her bang purple. And when she went back to them, they shaved her head. Yeah. So she went into the 2nd grade with no hair. Yeah.
Just couldn't stand her feeling good about herself or
at
pretty
all.
at all.
At all. My daughter's ego was huge. She knew that she was beautiful. She knew all the amazing things about herself. She was the kind of little girl that if she saw you and she thought that you were pretty, she would tell you, "You are so pretty. I love your shoes," or "I love your hair," or, she was so uplifting to people. She wanted people to feel good, not just herself. She wanted other people to feel good too. And like I said, when I seen her at school, and even though she was beat up, she still smiled.
And she had her tooth broken at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Poor little girl. Sounds like she had such a huge heart.
Yeah, she did.
It's hard to put words to it, how unnecessary the whole thing was. And even if they were going to be as evil and depraved and demented, as the judge said, as they were, the fact that they were allowed to continue to be that by DCFS is inexcusable. And I know in AJ's case, there are a few DCFS, or former employees, I should say, that are facing the music as we speak. At least we can hope they'll be convicted. I can't imagine why in Rica's case there aren't some of the same.
I don't understand it. I don't have a clue. It sickens me. I don't know. I hate the whole dang on system. And yeah. I'm not exactly sure. In my lawsuit, they've got some of the workers named. Those aren't all the workers or investigators. The worker that was on my son's case, even though she's not on Rica's case, she's a mandated reporter. She was an investigator. She had a job to do. And she should have done it. And she didn't. In fact, this particular woman went to her friend and told her friend that I'm so concerned about my daughter that I'm not doing what I need to do for my son. Then, this lady ended up with my son. When I got out of prison, she ended up with my son. So this is how I know this. But after my daughter's death, she said that little girl ended up dying. And that was it. Like no feeling, no emotion, no nothing.
It does seem like there are some people who are just kind of flying under the radar or even getting off completely. And it's a shame that it's allowed to happen, that the justice system is afraid to go after them or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it's happening and it needs to stop.
It's really amazing that we as a species can't get it together and learn how to protect our children adequately, at the very least.
We've got this system that is deciding who can parent and who can't parent. And they have no idea. They have no clue. You got people who don't understand different cultures and different upbringings. And so they come around, and because it's not the norm to them, it's not right. So, some situations, a little bit of help can go a long way. But you would separate my son. You'll take him away from here because I don't have food to feed him. You will take him away from me rather than help me get food for my house. But you'll take my son, place him somewhere else, and you'll pay them a lot of money. Right. Then you'll try to get him medicated and specialized. And that's even more money. And now he's in all these different programs and counseling and all this other jazz. But all I needed was a little bit of money or a little bit of help to get this food to feed my son and keep him home. It makes much more sense to go give 10 times more money to someone else to do what I could have done with just a little bit of help.
It blows my mind. It really does. It's another one of those examples of how they're taking kids from the wrong homes and leaving them in the wrong homes.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't get it.
I hope they're leaving you alone at this point and not harassing you, not continuing.
Well, I got my son back because Good. I was in prison. Mm-hmm. And so when I got out of prison, they told me it would be 6 months to a year that I would get my son back. And I said, why? When I went to prison, I had an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment. We had everything we needed. I had 2 jobs. He got taken simply because I went to prison. So when I got out of prison, you are trying to make me do all this crazy stuff. And I was very defiant. I was not very nice to them. And so they would keep coming into the courtroom and having all this craziness to say. And the judge is like, well, she doesn't behave in that way when she's here. And so I don't see any of that. What am I supposed to do? They ended up opening up my visitation. They ended up letting him come. The one worker that I had never done a home visit. I went to prison. I got out of prison. In 1 month, I had a job. In 2 months, I had my own place. They never came to do a home visit. They never came to check on anything, but they were so sure my son shouldn't be home with me. So at our 6 months, I knew I was bringing my son home. There was nothing nobody was going to do to stop my son from coming back home. So we go in there and they give me my son back, but left the case open, left it open. The judge said, well, we're going to do this and we're just going to leave it open. So we end up going back to court a few months later, and the guardian ad litem, who has never been to my house, who has never said anything to me, who has not checked on my son or anything. My son had ran away a couple of times and my son was having a hard time adjusting, so he was misbehaving. I reached out to my advocates and, we worked through everything that was going on with my son. So DCFS coming there and brings all this stuff into court. Well, first off, all of this stuff because I disclosed all of this stuff. I did what I needed to do to get the help that I needed for me and my son. So that's how you know all this stuff. The guardian ad litem agreed with DCFS and said that my son needed to be brought back into care and taken away from me. And so how would you know? You've never seen him. You haven't called to check on him. You don't know nothing besides what's in that report. So how can you make a judgment on where my son needs to be? So now I've been out now going on 2 years in December, and my son has been back with me, and we're great. He's not in any specialized programs at school anymore. He's going into high school. He's on the football team. It was an adjustment for us both. We both had a lot of stuff going on. I went to prison. My daughter ended up dying. He lost 2 women and 2 girls in his life that meant the world to him, So there was a lot of adjusting when we ended up getting back together, but we worked through it. We made it through it. And we're still making it through it. I mean, like I said, today was a really bad day for me. I've been crying. I've been, in my feelings, feeling the void, the loss. And my son is like, he's right here, with me. He feels that, he sees it. But I mean, it's not his job to take care of me or to pick me up or to be there for me when I have days like this. But the fact that he is here and he is loving on me and we're loving on each other and we're getting through these things together, I don't know what would happen or where I'd be or what I'd be going through if they wouldn't have given me my son back. Together, we can do a whole lot. We can take care of each other. We can look out for one another. We can talk through situations and just be there for each other. In care, he was acting up. He wasn't doing anything of what he's doing now. He barely went to school. He barely did anything. He didn't have any aspirations for life. He's excelled in so many ways, but they felt hell-bent on putting my son back in the system, and the judge told them no. For what?
Oh, thank goodness.
The judge said, why would I do that? They're supposed to, after the child is returned home, DCFS is supposed to keep the case open for like 6 months to monitor. The judge said, absolutely not. You guys have done enough. Leave this lady alone. And he signed off on them to leave us alone. You don't have to. She's got a support system in place. She's got people that she's working with. Leave her alone. But yes, they continue to try to harass and do what they are known to do, even though you guys are responsible for not doing your job. And my daughter's gone and you guys are trying to take my son. They put him in cities where there's no Black people. They put him in homes with racist white people. He got into a verbal match with a parent and a kid jumped up at him and pushed him. My son hit his head on the counter. And when he got up, he grabbed a knife at them and they kicked him out of there. But they didn't share the whole story. They didn't tell exactly what happened. What they told was, oh, he had a knife on them. Tell why he had the knife on him. Don't make it like my son is just some horrible kid, because he's not, and it's more of them covering things up and being the system that they are, so they're not getting any better. They're not taking ownership for their negligence in my daughter's death either. One of the state representatives said that, he would work with me on creating a bill and maybe even a Rica's law. All BS. I've had a meeting with them and it's all BS. I mean, I don't understand a lot of what's going on, but I'm working with some great folks and learning how to change policies and bills and make changes. So I'm gonna make a Rica's law. There's going to be a Rica's law. There's going to be changes, and I'm gonna do my part to make sure that there are.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that your son's doing better, and none of what happened to him was fair either. He's been traumatized just as well, and thank goodness he's back with you. You know, you can be the strongest person in the world, but you need people, and thank God it's you and he together.
Yeah. It's always been Charles, Rica, and me. Charles doesn't talk about Rica. I try to get him to open up about memories. You know, if there's anybody else that I can talk to that would know, it would be him. And I told him, I'm like, son, I mean, it was always the three of us. I'd be wanting to talk about her, but he can't, he won't. And he breaks down. He has moments where he just misses her so much. And he just cries and cries and cries. My older son, he's 24. He'd be 25 in a couple of days. And he's like, Mom, you know, I'm starting to forget the sound of her voice. And I'm starting to forget my sister. And he's like, I just don't want to forget her. And I tell him, you know, we got a lot of videos. We got a lot of pictures. We will not ever forget her.
Definitely not. It's got to be hard for him to look at them and you know, to know what he's lost. But yeah, it's equally important to see them and keep her close to his heart.
Yeah, my grandson, he's never met her, but he knows all about her. He knows all about her. He sees pictures and he's like, oh, that's my Auntie Rica. And he talks about her like he's been around her. I mean, my oldest son has done a wonderful job with, you know, letting his son know who his sister was, who his auntie is. I just told him, I said, just keep doing what you're doing with, you know, my grandson. And, you know, that's a great way to keep Rica's memory alive in your house.
That's so important. And telling her story, letting other people who never even came into contact with the family, just that's why it's so important to me to tell stories like this, because more people deserve to know who Rica was, and Rica deserves to be known. And we'll never let her be forgotten. You know, as much as I can do to keep her memory alive, I will be more than happy to do it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I wanted to stop. Chris Thorns does YouTube stories on this kind of thing. And it takes a strong person to do what you guys do, because I just had my one daughter and I don't ever want to live through anything remotely close to what happened to her. And the fact that you guys seek out these stories and you guys share and you guys give people voices, or, you know, looking out for the kids and sharing their stories and putting light on the horribleness of DCFS. And it's honorable that you guys do this kind of stuff, because Rica would have been just like the other 122 other kids. We know AJ Friend, his case was a really big case, but what about the other 121 kids that are nameless? Nobody talks about them. Nobody knows anything about them. It's so much that happens and nobody knows about it.
It happens all the time, you know, 4 to 5 kids a day.
It's ridiculous. I'm sick of it. If you don't want to love on your kid, give them to somebody who will. Kids are innocent. They don't ask to be here. There's nothing that Rica smoked a cigarette with the kid down the street and she got a whooping. Other than that, there was nothing that Rica had ever done. If I get mad at her, she would do something silly and it would turn into a laugh. She was a people pleaser. She wanted people happy. There's nothing. They asked her what she did to deserve what had happened to her. And one time she told her to take a shower and wash her hair. And rather than washing her hair, Rica's a black girl, first off. She don't need to wash her hair every day. So rather than take a shower and wash her hair, she was in the back of the shower playing, and she beat her. I don't know if you've seen the video. I don't think they showed that video. She was wet and she beat her because she was in the back of the shower playing and not washing her hair. that was a reason to beat my daughter the way she beat my daughter. When she smacked her head up against the wall really hard, you heard the thud.
Yes.
And she said, well, I didn't hit her that hard.
I made a comment about the thud in the notes that I wrote because that part of the video they did show, and with the knees and the back and everything else, no child deserves that. There's nothing a child, especially an 8-year-old, could ever do.
No, she didn't do anything. She really did not do anything. I mean, granted, I've always had quite the dysfunctional household and not the horrible dysfunction that some might think, but I had a swimming pool in the back of the house. Rica loved swimming, so I got the swimming pool, and we would have water fights in the house, and we'd be running all through the house with water and, soaking things up. I would move stuff off the floor, and we would draw with washable markers on the floors and stuff like that, so I allowed my kids to be kids constructively. I just don't know what Rica could have done. Her teacher said that she couldn't read, that she was having a hard time reading. She was having a hard time, in school. Rica was really, really smart. Her and Charles are 3 years apart. Charles is 3 years older than her. And Rica learned how to tie her shoe before Charles. Rica was riding her bike. Rica was doing everything. Like, Rica could read. Rica could write. Rica knew how to do a lot of things. Like, she was way above her age. So the fact that when she was with them and the school was saying, well, she couldn't read, she was struggling academically, it just didn't make sense to me. It makes all the sense because of the situation she was in. They said that in the house where she slept, you could see the other kids had, colorful bedding. They looked like they were cared for and loved. Rica's looked like a prison bunk.
Yeah, there's no excuse for any of it. That woman is just plain evil. I mean, there's really no other way to put it.
Evil.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that this is the way things turned out and that you lost such a huge part of you. I can only imagine how you get through each day, but it's incredibly admirable what you're doing and putting together this coalition, this network of services to help other parents and to help other kids. It's amazing.
It's a work in progress. It's definitely a work in progress. I'm on a steering committee with a group of folks. I'm working with the Shriver Center in Chicago. It's constant work, but I'm up for the job. My daughter's death lit a fire that I don't see going out anytime soon. I get a lot of rejection in my community. They won't let me come into the courtroom with parents to advocate for them, because I'm who I am. But I do more so things on the back end. I advocate through social media, Messenger, through text. I give as much help as I possibly can to whoever, whenever. I don't know. I can't say no. I know that some people are manipulative and manipulate, but I know some people really need help. And I'm nobody to try to figure that out, because I know that I went through drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, all in the name of trying to get somebody to listen to me. And the more they turned their backs and the more they closed doors, the deeper I dug into depression. I wanted to die, but I didn't want to kill myself. I did not want to live. So I did everything horrible, put myself in all the worst situations that would, I hoped, eventually kill me. I never died. So the fact that my daughter is gone, I have a duty. I have a duty. I have to give other people voices. I have to be there to help whoever, whenever. I don't care what the situation is. If the child is better off outside the home, there's no way I'm going to do anything, because clearly you don't got yourself together, and I'm not going to be responsible for helping a person bring a child into no type of chaos. But if a parent's really working, because I can only do so much. You have to do your part too. Right. And I do come across people who aren't doing their part. And when they're not doing their part, is I can't work harder than you. And I'm harsh. I'm really harsh, because I know what I went through and I know the work that I put in. And if you're not putting in no type of work to get your babies back, then don't waste my time.
Yeah, you can only help someone so much. They do have to do their part. They have to work as hard as they can if it's really important to them.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm so glad we got to hear about Rica and who she is, and hearing about what you're doing is it's inspiring. And I'm going to share the links to the Justice for Rica page and everything else that I can do. The Labyrinth Made Goods link, I'm going to put that out there too, because that's really important.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The candles are very, very nice.
Yeah.
The scents are premium scents. The burn, it illuminates the whole house. I come inside from outside. I'm like, oh, okay. And I have an upstairs, but my door is downstairs. And so whenever I open the door, I could smell it just coming through. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, that would be awesome to share that. Well,
you're doing a lot of
much.
important stuff, and it's fantastic. I hope you take care of yourself too, that you're not going to overwork yourself. I know staying busy has got to be important for you to keep your mind on something productive, but don't forget to give yourself some downtime too.
I can say since May of this year, I've really been living and trying to take care of myself. I haven't had many days like today in a very long time. And that's why today was kind of strange. And I went to church this morning, and I just felt like there was I just miss my baby so much. And it's just, there's never a time, there's never a day, there's never anything that like makes it happen or makes it not happen. It's just, sometimes I just miss her so much. And today was just one of those days that I don't know. I just woke up just feeling a void. Like I just wanted my baby with me so bad today. And I got pictures up in my office, and I've got pictures in the hallway, but I don't have her pictures anywhere else because I always just think about her and I always just miss her. But today I just wanted to just see her. So I've been fanning through, memories and looking at pictures of her. And it's just one of those days. And so to reach out and talk with you today was awesome because it gives me my baby fix and gets to talk about her. So I appreciate the time that you let me do this. It was right on time for me.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Anne as much as I enjoyed talking with her. She's truly an inspiration, and I wish her and her family nothing but the best going forward. They certainly deserve it. I'll do whatever I can to help them keep Rica's memory alive. That's it for this week. Join me next week for another story. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. You can also subscribe on YouTube by searching Suffer the Little Children Podcast. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com, where you can listen to episodes or become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to exclusive gifts. Follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Suffer the Little Children Pod, and on Twitter and TikTok at STLC Pod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook and Instagram. For more stories like the one you heard today, visit sufferthelittlechildrenblog.com. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. Email tips, comments, questions, or case suggestions to sufferthelittlechildrenpod@gmail.com. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. If you see something, say something. Until next week, bye everyone.